Yeah, so from an American standpoint, going to England, there's a few changes that, were quite apparent. One of the things is that the England roads are a lot more narrow. And so, there's a lot of roads that you can't actually fit two cars, driving down on the same street. And so it's quite common for cars to pull up on the curb to allow another car to pass and then to, pull off at the curb. Another thing is that England, if they're trying to like signal someone to go, they frequently flash their lights. So in America, if someone's flashing their lights at you, usually we view it as a bad thing. Usually they're angry with you. But in England, if someone like does a quick flash of their lights, it's like kind of like a go ahead, or, you know, sorry about that, or it's a positive thing if someone gives you a quick flash of their lights. Other things that were kind of new to England is traveling by buses. As a missionary, you spend a lot of time on the buses, and a lot of people in England do. Not as many people own cars, and those that do, the cars are, you'll never see a truck in England, and most of the cars are very small and very compact, generally, so that they can ride on the roads. Whereas like a normal road here, that you drive through a neighborhood is usually like the main road on a busy street in Manchester or elsewhere. And so roads are, definitely more narrow, and that's something that kind of changes how you drive. Of course, something that most people know is that you drive on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road. And so that takes a little bit of getting used to, is the idea that, the whole left turn, and there's a lot more roundabouts as well. And so that took a little bit of time to adjust to, is getting used to, okay, if you're in this lane on the roundabout, where do you get off? And that type of thing. And so I got a driver's license while I was in England, and I had to do some driving classes to be sure that I had the roundabouts down and the driving on the left down. And so that was kind of a cool experience. You can actually use your American license to drive in England for up to a year. But after that point in time, you do need to get an English license. And so I have one that's good till 2060. And so that's kind of a cool little factoid. Some of the other things that were kind of new to me, from an American perspective, is a lot of the places in England, like a lot of the homes are, it's known as like terrace housing. And so instead of having kind of distinct houses with like their yard, a lot of the homes are, all connected. So there'll be this row of houses, that all of them look identical to, and the only thing like basically disconnect, makes one house look different from another house is if it's like painted a different color. In which case, there's just a line where you can see where it's one color to the next color. And that's kind of separates out their houses. And that's how a lot of the houses in England are, A lot of them are kind of that style of home where, it's like that, or what it'll be like a duplex where there's, one home connected to another home. And again, there's kind of that split. And people in England tend to have, most people have small yards that are in the suburbs or in the cities. Whereas in America, we usually have like a decent sized yard. In England, a lot of times it'll be, a small, like, 5 foot by 8 foot, little yard in the front. And so a lot of times we'll just have like rocks. Most people in England I'd say most people don't actually own lawnmowers because most of them don't actually have yards. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that were unique from an American perspective. You kind of get used to, English people on a whole are a little bit more, usually generally more reserved, kind of keep more to themselves. Whereas Americans, we're kind of like, go and talk to a lot of people. In England, there's kind of more of, there's like a really rich culture of, Anglican or Church of England. That's kind of the nationally recognized England, and the Queen's actually kind of the leader of the Queen of England. I don't know if she does much with it, but she's kind of technically the leader of the church. So a lot of people have that kind of that tradition of the Church of England, or also of the Catholic Church. And so a lot of people are christened as babies when they're, into those churches. However, most people never, go to church at all. And so for a lot of people, a lot of people kind of have the idea of God and the concept of God, but the idea of attending church and the idea of, religion is sometimes foreign for a lot of people, whether they're English or whether they're from other countries. And there's also a lot of people, recognizing that there's a lot of people from other countries. There's also many Muslims in a lot of the communities, they're coming from the Middle Eastern countries. And so that kind of, makes it a really, really kind of complex and rich religious, standpoint, or kind of the social socially there's a lot of different religions represented in England.